Hello fans, it's your king and leader, beacon of moral fortitude, Cody the King of YouTube, coming at you live, hot and ready, with another groundbreaking video. Folks, if you've been following the news headlines lately, you've probably heard of a little show called Game of Thrones. And you've heard of the last season where all of the fanboys that love to find something wrong with their favorite thing when it goes off the air are complaining about season 8 of Game of Thrones being terrible. Now, of course, I see through this pathetic ploy. These lazy loafers, they want them to have to make a new show so they can sit around and watch another 10 episodes. It's so pathetic and so transparent what they're trying to do. But I'm going to give you a detailed explanation of why Game of Thrones Season 8 is actually probably one of the most nuanced, complex, most well-written storylines ever made. And I've been behind some of the big shows and the big movies. I've written a lot of these things. I've been the guy behind a lot of this, so I know a lot about the inner mechanisms of all this, folks. So I can really tell you what all's going on from a filmmaker, a showrunner, a writer's perspective. What people like to say is wrong with Season 8, they say it was rushed because the guys want to they want to direct their new Star Trek movie. They say that the characters were dumbed down, like Tyrion and Jaime Lannister. They say they were dumbed down and the writing just failed overall. You couldn't be more wrong. There's never been writing more nuanced than what happened in Game of Thrones Season 8. If you want to blame anybody for any of the problems that you pretend happened in Season 8, blame George R.R. Martin, who is too dumb and too lazy to write a new book. He's had years, and he won't. He's too busy going out and raking in his money from his HBO show and giving interviews with a smug-looking face, and really makes me want to really give the guy a piece of my mind because he looks so incredibly smug in these interviews. But he's too busy gallivanting and doing all that than to put some pen and paper together and write the final books. So don't blame David and DB. They did a fantastic job. What they did was a masterpiece. A lot of people, even the fanboys, they say that Season 6 was the best season, and they did that without the books. So don't you dare blame David and DB, who gave us this show for so many years. Game of Thrones, obviously it has some negatives. The vulgarity, the nudity. I could have done without all that. But the medieval times, the themes of honor, they were good. Season 8. One of the main things people like to say, Dany wouldn't have turned and killed all those people with her dragon. Not true. There was plenty of foreshadowing that this was coming in her character arc, that this was the final thing. Throughout the entire season, there's all these little tidbits. Her brother being bloodthirsty, her willingly wanting to set people on fire when they disobey her laws and her rules. This was foreshadowed from the get-go. So if you try to say that that was a shaky premise, a shaky build-up for her to do that, you're dead wrong. Another thing people like to say is that Tyrion got dumbed down and the writing for him wasn't as good. Wrong once again. Tyrion had many brilliant advisements that he gave to Dany, and his discourse with his brother, the final scenes was his brother, some of the most intelligent and well-written dialogue the world has ever seen. Jon Snow, people like to say that he was dumbed down. Well, listen, folks, just because he said that Dany was his queen, that doesn't mean he's dumbed down. You have to consider the complexity of human emotions, the nuance, the underlying motivations of any person, and he was so overcome with love and respect and honor for Dany, that of course he's going to say that she is his queen. Another thing, Jaime Lannister. This is probably one of the big ones. People like to say that Jaime's entire character arc was ruined because he went to fight in the north and he finally was with Brienne of Tarth, the big lady, as they call her. And I've even drawn a little picture here if you're not understanding what I'm talking about. There's Jaime Lannister. He's hugging Brienne of Tarth, and he's saying in his box, "I love you, Brienne." And Brienne is saying, "Thank you for making me feel like a woman." That's just a little sweet thing I came up with. Jaime, he is the embodiment of a true, nuanced person with, like I said, different motivations, different attitudes at any one time. And you're always going to return back to the behavior of the past. That's a simple thing they teach you in psychology. So for him to go back to Cersei like he did, and for it to be such mixed feelings and mixed motivations, that is true to form. That's humanity for you, folks. So no, that's not ruining a character arc. That's writing a realistic and nuanced show, a realistic and nuanced character in Jaime Lannister. I can give you a real life example of this. Remember the movie The Lion King with Scar. Scar pushes Simba's dad off of the mountain. He murders him on top of a mountain. He obviously didn't really think that through. He had different motivations. He had a very complex mindset to want to do that, to murder Simba's dad. And obviously he has a big scar on his face, so even if he was wanting to be king, you're not going to be a king with a big scar on your face. When's the last time that you saw a politician, a president, that had a big scar going down his face? They just don't get elected. So obviously Scar did not think this through. And that's a real life example of someone doing something in the heat of the moment with emotion, having so many different motivations. So at the end of the day, folks, Game of Thrones Season 8, a subversive masterpiece. Everything was well written. Everything was so nuanced and complex. You have to have a very high IQ to even understand the last season of Game of Thrones. You have to not only have read all the books, but also have theorized beyond all those books, because George R.R. Martin is obviously too lazy to finish his work. So yes, some of our expectations were subverted, certainly. People didn't expect what happened with Dany. They didn't expect Bran, the boy in the wheelchair, to become the king. They didn't expect all that, but that's what happened. It was perfect subversion of our expectations, and it was such a brilliant ending. So perfect, just great. And I don't want to hear any more negative about it. I don't want to see any more negative videos about it. This video should put all of that nonsense to rest. Humanity is complex. Humanity is nuanced. And Game of Thrones Season 8 perfectly summed all that up.